By cropping in, you simply discard the pixels you don't need to change the size of the aspect ratio of the image or tinker with the composition. But if you think cropping only makes things smaller, you need to think about changing the way you thought you think, because we can also crop out. Cropping out of a photograph might be as useful as cropping in. It's a voyage into an area where pixels do not currently exist. It can change the impact of an image completely. In this video, we'll look at why you might want to crop out of an image and where to find the pixels to fill in the universe outside of your picture. The process of cropping out can be done in any photo compositing software. You can get it done in Microsoft PowerPoint if you're particularly feisty. Here, I'm using Affinity Photo. Once your image is open, change the project units to inches and then dive into the document setup. Select a height and width that corresponds to your desired aspect ratio. I'm going to go with an 8:10 for this one. The first example is an image I already like, but to get the subject in a position I want, there's empty space remaining that needs to become part of the image. I'll resize to fit and place where it needs to go. I'll make a copy that I'm going to use as a cutting and pasting layer. Now here's the fun part. If there's enough information in the background, you can select a clean area and, ensuring you have the background layer selected, copy and paste the selection as a new layer with Ctrl+C to copy, Ctrl+V to paste. You can simply move the selection over in some situations and use a soft eraser to blend in the overlap. But often, you won't get a match with the background, especially if the lighting isn't even. In this case, use the Move tool to select the side of the copy and drag across to make a mirror of the original space. If there's a seam or mirrored textures, use the Healing tool on a new layer to blend it in. If it's a minor extension on a plane area, you can simply stretch the background, but don't go too far or you'll get ugly pixel artifacts. In this example, the image has a central part that I like, but the border's busy and it needs to go. We essentially need to crop in so that we can crop back out. It's a lighting setup shot that I thought was a throwaway, but I'd like to turn it into a keeper. Copy and paste parts of the background where we need them over the original background rather than the empty space around the image. It works in the same way as we did before. Rather than crop the image down to the core area, I'll add a crop overlay. That's a new layer filled with white, and then we add a mask. Make the rectangular selection on the mask. Using the Move tool, we can resize the selection to a certain aspect ratio by changing the width and height in the Transform tab, and use a bucket fill with black. That'll show through the picture that we need. Resize using the corner node so the aspect ratio is maintained. Now we have a crop, but all the data is still there under the white space. One step further, and we have an example with non-horizontal lines. Some might call them diagonal lines. We can't simply mirror or stretch it because the angle of the line will change. So after we copy the useful bit of background and resize it, we can choose the Perspective tool. This allows us to move one corner of the copy independently of the other corners and pull it out so the diagonal line runs in the direction that we want it to. You can only go so far with cropping out because you can only extend the background with pixels copied from what you already have. In some situations where I'll know I'll need to extend the background in post, I'll take extra images on site of the plain background on its own, lit in the same way as the portraits that follow. In Affinity, I can paste this emergency image as a layer, mask and resize to get the decluttered background that I need. So if you have a messy background, or took an image from closer than you eventually needed, cropping out will help you get the right image delivered.